What I want to talk about is models of understanding one's own perspective. I've been very interested in how people think about things, particularly when it comes to their emotions, what drives them to do what they do or see things the way that they see things. We all kind of move around in the world with our own perception and biases. And we all know that, right? When you look at another person, you know that they're coming from wherever they're coming from. We assume that they have a subjectivity, kind of like our own. They are real, alive. They're not just like, you can assume that they're not, but we assume that they are. And because of that assumption, we project ourselves into other people to understand them. We assume that we can tell when someone isn't making sense and when they are. But everyone believes whenever they're doing whatever they're doing, regardless of if we personally think it makes sense, and by make sense I mean that very broadly. Hello again. Subjectivity is a private experience, and at best, when we're thinking about how somebody's inner world operates, we usually think about it from our own perspective of how our inner world operates. We do this in different ways, but what things mean is part of how we interpret what actions mean for other people. Language is a good tool to communicate, but it's not a perfect tool. I can't convey to you my entire inner world, right? I can't give you the lens of my existence for you to see what I see. When we speak to each other, we have to assume that we're on the same page, at least if we're speaking the same language. And that's kind of like a disconnect between you and the world as you experience it. That slight disconnect expands out in a rippling way into how we experience other people. While we respect that people have their own perspective, it's often very difficult to see how different everybody sees the world. I hope that you see where I'm pointing towards vaguely. That problem of underlying assumptions kind of undercutting the true meaning of any one experience. That problem, that dissonance, is potentially solvable. How, Nigel? That you learn telepathy? No. The tool that I think is most helpful to bridge the gap between two people, to really make it clear how different we are from each other in terms of our subjective experience, is cognitive functions. MBTI is the way that I got into this idea of cognitive functions in the first place. We've all heard of MBTI before, especially 16 Personalities. In particular, that website's very popular, but I don't think it necessarily factors in the cognitive functions, which is a really important piece in all of this. It typed me as a INTP or INTJ. Now, I don't think that was true at all. But at the time, I was like, that makes sense, I do think a lot. I do be thinking. The framework that MBTI comes from actually comes from Carl Jung. I know people feel mixed feelings about that guy, but it comes from a very not too popular, I think, book from him called Psychological Types that he made very early in his career, and then kind of left it alone. Most of his stuff was dedicated to different topics entirely. We'll give that a second. Actually, no, we'll deal with that. Give me a second. I can't speak for Carl Jung. My ideas are so intertwined with contemporary understandings and interpretations of the cognitive functions and these personality models that I don't think I would be doing. Carl Jung and his work in its pure form, fairly, what is it? I don't know the phrase, but fairly. I don't think I would be presenting it in its true form. And if you wanted to understand that better, I definitely would recommend his book, Psychological Types. So I'm going to be talking about cognitive functions as I see them, the mental posture and final result, the end product of the copious amounts of information that I've consumed on this topic, and how it's mingled into my head into something of my own interpretation of what these functions mean. So you have 4 styles, let's say, of information, and that's how I like to think about it. Information that we're engaging with at any one moment in reality, some more intensely than others, right? And in different ways than others. 4 styles of information: sensing, intuition, thinking, and feeling. Sensing and intuition are perception style information, or perception functions. They result in perception functions. By that I mean that they're not editing or adjusting or organizing the information that they receive. It's more a matter of resolution, trying to gather the information and store that information in as pure or as precise a way as possible. When we're talking about sensing, for example, when we're talking about sensing specifically, we're talking about concrete information. I found that this doesn't remove itself from abstract information per se, but concrete in the sense that, example. This is not a real apple, but this looks kind of like an apple, right? This is not just what I see. It's also what I feel. It's the lighting. It's the color. It's the, how soft or hard it is, whatever. This is an experience. Sensing is about the experience. Intuition, though, is not about the experience of this thing. Intuition is the possibilities. I could throw this thing. It's not just possibilities, mind you. A symbol on here is supposed to be like a pie symbol, and instantly that kind of like reminds me, or I associate with math, obviously, but there's also the association with I see the tower, those arcs that you see in Japan. I think it's Japan. If it's not Japan, I really fucked that up because it might be China, which, saying that might be worse. Associations. Intuition is associations, it's patterns, it's potential, it's abstract, it's symbolic. It's not the experience itself. You see the difference? I hope so. If not, I messed up. That's my bad. Picture. I hope that cures you of your confusion. Thinking and feeling are very different from sensing and intuition because they actually try to need, I say like need as in like, you know what I mean, the information that it gathers, right? When I see this thing, this is an experience, but I can make a feeling, value, judgment of what this experience is. But feeling is an interpretation of not just emotion, because emotion in a lot of ways is a part of an experience, right? But feeling is about value, what it means, what that emotion means about a situation. I might feel fear, and I might respond to the fear, but we're talking about what that fear means about the thing being feared, or the feeling of fear itself, right? It's a narrative interpretation of what is happening. What mode are we in? Is this a calm space? Is this a intense space? Is this a subtle space? These aren't giving definition, like a concrete, clear definition of things. So not quite emotion, although it uses emotion or refers to emotion often. Thinking comes in a lot of forms. When I think about this thing, when I say it looks like an apple, apple is a specific thing with specific qualities that I can tell you. Apple stem, apple leaf, apple shape. These are categories, and maybe I experience them as categories because of my own type, but I'll get into that in a second. But it's about definition, defining, giving definition, categorization, context to a thing. If you want to know what something is, you access thinking. I'm going to be talking more about this, by the way, in the future, getting into specifics. I think just kind of running through these ideas, this was a wild ride. If you end up watching this and it's a smooth ass video and it makes sense, editing Nigel put in that work. I'm just saying. Me recording this, absolute mess. 0 out of 0. I've cut through. But I will say that I do be thinking. But introverted functions, the introverted version of each of these functions, we tell you the far structure. Like this is not I think the big picture differences. Cut this bitch out. That's right. Let's say cut this bitch out. I'd say extroverted judging function, extroverted judging function. Extroverted extroverted. Then I kind of refer to all of you and I will explain his ideas, which I don't want to do. Sorry, introverted categorization. I'd say that judging functions major objects. Okay. When you're trying to define the meaning of something, that's reset. Define and define what the meaning. Around, but I said that judging functions is the meaning that looks wait, doing something and seeing what happens. Well, I'm not going to comparing one state to another state, right? If I look at a moment, right, an object in a certain setting, and I move it, or I interact with it in some way that changes it, the question then becomes, what is the difference between the state that I saw and the state that I'm in right now? That tells, that gives facts about the situation, and that gives definition to, or meaning to. Just subscribe. Experience.